What did that do to Trump? Did that stop Trump from saying he's going to take Greenland? No. Did that stop Trump from implementing tariffs? No. You have to push back on bullies. It's that simple. And this entire right-wing franchise, this entire global fascist movement is a bunch of stupid bullies.
You will pet me, whether you like it or not.
Here, we'll watch the 8-minute version. Apparently, he says the liberal New World Order was based around a lie in this, and that's why people really like it.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless.
And he's not appeasing. He's not. I actually like what Mark Carney has been doing, even though I'm, skeptical. Let's just say I'm Carney curious, okay? Or maybe Carney agnostic, because there are some things that he has done, especially since Donald Trump is deliberately posturing as though he's going to annex Canada. He recognizes the dangers that that presents and was, this is a major ally to the United States of America, openly choosing to leverage a better relationship with China in an effort to maintain sovereignty. So I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. I think that's a smart thing to do. It's what I've been saying European leaders should be doing.
And in it, he asked a simple question.
I've been saying that he should be. What Mark Carney did this past week is what I've been saying European leaders should be doing since Liberation Day. Okay? And what have European leaders done since then? What have they done? They talked about the real threat being China and Russia. The real threat is China. The real threat is China. The real threat is China. America, please, we are your dog. America, please, we will capitulate. And what did that do? What did that do to Trump? Did that stop Trump from saying he's going to take Greenland? No. Did that stop Trump from implementing tariffs? No. You have to push back on bullies. It's that simple. And this entire right-wing franchise, this entire global fascist movement is a bunch of stupid bullies. The time for maintaining some sort of liberalism is done. Liberalism is failing. Liberalism is falling apart. If you still believe that there is going to be some kind of reasonable centrism we can get back to, you're wrong. You're delusional. Okay? Wake up. It's over. You have two options, socialism or barbarism. And right now, barbarism is winning. And a lot of these guys who are liberals themselves, who are in charge of these countries, are trying to still maintain the dignity as America is basically saying, no, you don't understand. There is no dignity for you here. Internationalism or the liberal New World Order is done. It's over. Okay, it's over. It's now going to be my way or the highway. It already was, but now you can't even actually go home and make it seem like you have some semblance of sovereignty.
How did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with the greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window. Workers of the world unite. He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains.
By the way, when he says great powers, he just means America. I love that. I love that he's like, yeah, someone's doing this. Is really up. Someone is just, you missed a sick ass line. Yeah. He's talking about neoliberalism.
Depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes. So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited.
It is an undeniable fact that the world was much better when the Soviet Union was still around. I mean, dude, I said that where everyone yelled at me. I said that in an interview that I was doing at the Zoran election victory party, where like, you don't have to agree with the USSR. You don't have to think about all of the, you don't have to think about the excesses in terms of their own self-governance. But objectively speaking, when there was an alternative vision out there, especially one that did not shy away from pushing back against America during the Cold War, okay, a lot of other countries in the middle, even if they were in the Imperial core, were able to keep their gains, keep their benefits. And in the absence of that counter mechanism, in the absence of that counterweight, it is not an accident that we have seen the great explosion of neoliberalism in every Western liberal capitalist country. When capital owners no longer feared the threat of an alternative, the threat of a good example, they did away with all of the safeguards, all of the regulations, first in the United States of America and then elsewhere. All over Europe, you started seeing the same corrosive influence of capital make its way through a period of neoliberalization, the destruction of social safety nets, the destruction of what remains of the regulatory body. Okay? Holy disgusting tankies. Brother, you are fantasizing about a world that does not exist when you complain about this, okay? I need you to understand. Not for people behind the wall. Oh my God. The French healthcare system was literally the design of the Communist Party backed by the USSR. It's thanks to them that we have healthcare for all, and people bash the left here when we have one of the best, or used to have, healthcare systems in the world. It's the same principle it's the same exact situation here in the United States of America, by the way. Obviously, the quality of life or the living standards are different. The currency exchange is different. Having said that, however, the attitude remains. A lot of people don't realize that in the United States of America, if it wasn't for commies, trade unionists, socialists fighting in the streets, dying in the streets, that America would not have any labor laws whatsoever. You wouldn't have the weekend. You would still have child labor. And ironically enough, we still do have child labor in the United States of America. Okay. And not just for undocumented immigrant children. I mean, like straight up, you have child labor in many states that have openly legalized it. Like there are so many excesses under capitalism as well that many people do not understand or recognize, because for the longest time, you've existed under the system thinking, well, the alternative is much scarier, is much more dangerous. And in the absence of said alternative, you have this explosion of neoliberalism around the globe. You have the forces of capital taking up more and more, taking up a bigger role in what previously was dealt with by the government. People don't realize that a lot of the things that you take for granted were fought for by your forefathers in the labor movement. All the hate sub clip Andes are here. I mean, great. It's fine. You can keep complaining about tankies this, tankies that, but a lot of Europeans benefited without realizing, like, all of the social democracy that Europe has, even still to this day, they got because capital had to give in. Capital had to give in. Capital had to concede to the demands being made. And those demands were made because there was an alternative vision. Once all of that was eroded through Red Scare all around Western liberal nations, Western liberal democracies, you have no competition. You have no ideological competition and full-blown pure capitalism. And as living standards erode in Western liberal capitalist nations, people look to blame whoever they can. And for a lot of these guys, for the reactionary movement, the best people you can... What is DHS live? Dude, why? What do you mean DHS is up, DHS is live? What the are you talking about? I like how he's making an analogy about the mean communist government forcing business to comply while Canada is negotiating with China while the U.S. is an extremely capitalistic country that's forcing these nations to comply. Exactly. People don't recognize this. People don't understand that, like, oh, Bovino is live? I don't care about bovine Bovino. Dude, come on. That Nazi. I know what the DHS stands for. Anyway, the point I'm making is that alternative vision must come back. And that alternative vision clearly is not going to be supported by China. Okay? Let's be real. For better or for worse, China decided they are not going to wage any sort of ideological war around the world, even if it's beneficial for their immediate interests in their backyard in the South China Sea. They're not going to do that. Okay? So if it is a game of sovereignty for a lot of these nations, the only way that you can maintain national sovereignty, especially as America is increasingly doing away with the aesthetics of liberty and freedom, making it seem as though you have a say, is going to be through, and I know normally I say nukes, but it's going to be through serious organizing and an ideological commitment to an alternative vision, giving workers back the power that they deserve. It's not going to happen with, like, China helping you either.
You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination. The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the architecture, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable. And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactional...
I mean, he's talking about just America when he says great powers, for the record. Like, everybody understands that, right? Like, every time he says great powers, just put America in there, because that's what he's talking about. He's saying law of the jungle, we're abandoning the aesthetics of, like, liberal democracy, and we're giving ground to might makes right politics. We're going back to almost like a colonial structure here. I was actually thinking about this the other day. I was wondering if, like, a peasant in the age of monarchs would think to himself like, well, I'm so glad me lordship has sent the squires over to Jerusalem. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Holy Crusades, like it's like, oh, all the bounty will come back to me, a peasant. In the same way that in the age of the internet, there are American peasants who unironically are so committed to like American force projection that they do delude themselves into thinking that, American military posture in Venezuela is actually good for me. American military posture in Iraq was good for me somehow. It wasn't.
Will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty.
Yeah. My lordship is based. My lordship is based. Men who would have been feudal peasants trembling outside their hut as prima noctis is carried out inside for most of human history really want you to know that might makes right and there is no rule-based international order. I mean, this is a direct ripoff of what I say all the time from this guy. Greenland exists less as landmass in the mind of the online right and more a psychosexual fixation, unable to imagine themselves as powerful men. They instead, oh my God, this is literally what I talk about all the time about weak men fantasizing about American power projection. That's bar for bar, down to the prima nocta. Prima nocta. I know prima nocta is not real. Shut the f up. It doesn't matter. It's a good way to emphasize how hard the average person is getting in this process. Okay, don't hit me with the actually. Greenland exists less as landmass in the mind of the online right and more a psychosexual fixation. Unable to imagine themselves as powerful men, they instead fantasize about powerful men doing so for them while they exist as mere accessory. And that, for the record, is identical with power projection from a militant state at the domestic level too. This is the exact same reason why right-wingers will look at a police officer shooting someone or will look at an ICE agent shooting someone and say, comply or die. Oh, was it a woke, libtarded woman that was killed? That's a good thing, actually. Okay? It's because of their own personal weakness and their own recognition of their own personal weakness that makes them lean into this kind of power projection of the state. A powerful state is actually going to do this for me. Not realizing that you are infinitely more likely to be under the boot than to be wearing the boot next time around. It's why I always say this is serf mindset. This is peasant mindset. A lot of Americans see themselves, without recognizing it, but a lot of Americans behave like cattle. They behave like slaves. They behave like peasants. They refuse to develop sovereignty for themselves. They refuse to become class conscious. They delude themselves into thinking that they have a say in this process, or at the very least, even if they don't have a say in this process, it's somehow good because their ideological enemies that they've been taught to hate are being dominated somehow, somewhere. Whether that be the Ansar Allah movement all the way out in Yemen, where we wasted billions of dollars bombing the poorest country on the planet to try to get them to submit, to try to get them to refuse to maintain a blockade on their own coastlines as long as Israel continued its genocide, or even at the domestic level, when an ICE agent goes and shoots a 37-year-old mother, they think to themselves, well, the state is powerful and it's my guy doing it. It's my people holding the gun, so I must defend it. And that makes me feel powerful. As long as I fantasize or imagine a liberal out there, someone who I've been conditioned into thinking is my ideological enemy, someone who I cannot recognize has the same exact class interests as me. As long as those people are being dominated, as long as I can look down at them, then things are fine. As Matt Christmas says, this is the dual sadisms of American politics. You're not part of the team. You're not even remotely a part of the team. You're actually getting over. But as long as you have someone to look down on, that makes you feel better in comparison. During the time of Reconstruction, this was the prevailing attitude. At least I am not black. In the brief period of time when Reconstruction was taking place, when white working class individuals and the newly freed black working class individuals recognized that they had the same exact class interests, and we quickly did away with that by allowing the same racial pecking order to be restored by way of lynch mobs, by way of the Klan. And that attitude continued, not only just in the South, but also that attitude was legalized in the North as well through redlining and different systems of enforcement. Americans still to this day have this kind of domineering attitude that we all know and call white supremacy. The notion that the notion that LBJ also talked about as well, that like the white working class will never recognize that you're robbing them blind as long as you give them someone to look down on. Hell, they'll open up their pockets for you. So you're saying normal Americans don't benefit from imperialism? Yes, the only benefit that normal Americans get, the labor aristocracy concept is not incorrect, okay? Of course, there are, bounties that come from cheap labor, cheap commodities that you can purchase. But at the end of the day, the amount of wealth that is captured in the hands of the very few here in the United States of America does not make its way down to the average working class individual. Okay? Yes, you get to have cheap TVs. You get to have an iPhone, right? You get to have an iPhone, and that's extracted through an hyper exploitative structure where the rare earth minerals that are extracted for said iPhone is done by, child slave labor, okay? In countries that have previously been destroyed by colonial violence and kept down as a part of the global South so that we could continue extracting their natural resources at a price point that is favorable to us. Okay? But those benefits are marginal. They're aesthetic for the most part. We live in the wealthiest country on the planet, and there's almost 1 million people that sleep outside every single night, dude. That is insane. That is insane. The only benefit that Americans actually have, the only tangible and very real benefit that the average American actually has, is that they are not under the boot. They're sometimes wearing the boot, right? They do not get their share of the imperial super profits. An increasingly smaller number of people actually receive all of that bounty. Americans don't receive it. They get treats, but that's it. That's it. You get mass-processed, cheap luxury commodities that would be considered impossible to acquire, half a century ago, okay? And you get it readily available, delivered to your doorstep at a moment's notice, and that makes you think, oh, we have prosperity. The inverse of this labor aristocracy argument that's very frustrating to me, at least, especially when I'm trying to explain to American hogs that they're getting over in this process, is that a lot of orthodox Marxists unironically make the argument that what Trump is doing is good. Okay? Like, what's the purpose here? By saying this is an L take, what do you want the labor aristocracy to recognize? That they are a part of a class that is truly benefiting from American empire? Is that what you want them to recognize? Do you want them to lean further in the direction of Trump's dominance? Are you stupid? Like, I get posturing as a Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, third worldist makes you feel good. Like you are morally consistent here, okay? But you're not a Maoist, you're not a part of the Maoist brigades in the Philippines, You're not living in the forest, okay, trying to fight against the Philippines government, okay? You're living in the United States of America. Shut the up. I guess we should do no organizing in the United States of America at all, considering that no matter how you exist in the United States of America, whether you're homeless or whether you're a plumber or an HVAC business owner, okay, with like 3 employees, you're all benefiting from the imperial bounty. I don't know what happened there. Maybe a little baby F.
They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty. Sovereignty that was once grounded in rules but will increasingly be anchored in the ability to withstand pressure. This room knows this is classic risk management. Risk management comes at a price. But that cost of strategic autonomy, of sovereignty, can also be shared. Collective investments in resilience are cheaper.
What the is happening, man?
Than everyone building their own fortresses. Shared standards reduce fragmentations. Complementarities are positive sum. And the question for middle powers like Canada is not whether to adapt to the new reality. We must. The question is whether we adapt by simply building higher walls or whether we can do something more ambitious. Now, Canada was amongst the first to hear the wake-up call, leading us to fundamentally shift our strategic posture. Canadians know that our old, comfortable assumptions that our geography and alliance memberships automatically conferred prosperity and security, that assumption is no longer valid. And our new approach rests on what Alexander Stubb, the President of Finland, has termed value-based realism. Or to put another way, we aim to be both principled and
value-based realism? I feel like value-based realism is like oxymoronic.
recognizing that progress is often incremental, that interests diverge, that not every partner will share all of our values. So we're engaging broadly, strategically, with open eyes. We actively take on the world as it is, not wait around for a world we wish to be. We are calibrating our relationships so their depth reflects our values. And we're prioritizing broad engagement to maximize our influence. Given the fluidity of the world at the moment, the risks that this poses, and the stakes for what comes next. And we are no longer just relying on the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. We are building that strength at home.
It's the Finlandization of Canada, baby. Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, yeah, it is definitely really interesting to consider that, like, Mark Carney is one of the first, like, directly aligned countries that recognize the game and is trying to leverage relations with China. That's number one. But number two, the juxtaposition of how Mark Carney speaks about the destruction of the liberal New World Order in the hands of Donald Trump versus what Donald Trump says is so crazy. And I understand why people look to that and go, yep, that's where we're at. This is obviously Mark Carney looks like a brilliant orator in comparison to Donald Trump because he is. He is a much more intelligent person. He just ripped off Yan Shui Tong's, a Chinese international relations scholar, theory of moral realism, check logs. We're going to comment about Marxist-Leninism and MLMs. I get what you're saying, but do you see how it kind of seems like you're saying Marxist organizing in the U.S. is stupid and you're stupid if you want to do that, or even if you make the argument that it would be positive, you know? Wait, what? Are you No, I'm saying that to people who bring up labor aristocracy. I'm saying that that's a dumb point to bring up. I'm saying this. I'm saying if you are constantly chirping about the labor aristocracy and the imperial super profits that get distributed to the labor force, you are basically saying you're rendering all working class organizing in the United States or in the imperial core to be useless. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that at all. I'm actually trying to wake people up by taking advantage of this vulgar and uniquely honest, abrasive state of affairs that has destroyed the liberal international order that was always beneficial for the imperial core, and leaning into people's interest in maintaining sovereignty to explain to them that this is the capitalist design, and that's the reason why European leadership has consistently played ball with Trump, no matter how belligerent he has gotten, because they are also servants of capital. If you preach labor aristocracy to the people in the imperial core, you're either telling them what they have is great or asking them to self-flagellate. Neither is successfully encouraging what we want for the world. Exactly. It's very stupid. That's why I don't entertain it. Shh, stop.
You will pet me whether you like it or not. Whether you like it or not.